If you had to die once in the solar system, where do you think would be the best place to go? Would it be Venus, which would turn you into ashes, or Neptune, which can freeze you into ice cubes? If you think the most terrifying things in space are black holes or alien monsters, that underestimates the lethality of the solar system. Even if you don't leave the arms of this star, just visiting a few planets around is enough to make you experience a destruction more terrifying than death. These planets are not paradise. They have never welcomed the arrival of life. They are the ultimate execution grounds carefully designed by the universe. They use extreme temperatures, radiation, storms, and pressure to create the most terrifying ways to die. This video will start a journey of exploration on the death map of the solar system, taking you into an alien purgatory of instant destruction sufficient to make any life disappear. In the icy vacuum of space, life cannot exist at all without protective measures. Even on our solar system's neighboring planets, almost all have hostile environments that can be lethal. Every planet can be unique and terrifying in its own way, sending inadvertent travelers to their destruction. The first stop on this journey begins with Mercury, the Sun's closest neighbor. On Mercury, there is no atmosphere to block the hot solar radiation that hits the ground, causing daytime temperatures to reach 427 degrees Celsius, enough to instantly melt metal. If you stood on the crumpled face of Mercury, intense ultraviolet rays would instantly burn your skin. Exposed water evaporates rapidly. Even the tears in your eyes and the moisture on your tongue are not immune. Here, there is no air to breathe or conduct heat. Your shadow is as clear and sharp as a blade, and the black sky remains unchanged even at noon. The scorching anaerobic radiation occurs almost instantaneously. Even in a spacesuit, the cooling system would fail quickly. You would feel a heat wave, breathing difficulties, and a choking sensation from the thin oxygen, enough to cause a person to lose consciousness in 10 seconds before collapsing under heat and oxygen deprivation. But Mercury isn't just extremely hot. If you were to land on the side where there is no sunlight, what awaits you would be the frozen polar regions. At minus 179 degrees Celsius, your body would instantly freeze. All liquids would solidify, leaving only the ultimate cold and endless despair. Now you're on Venus, which among the planets in the solar system is undoubtedly the closest true portrayal of hell. The atmosphere of Venus is extremely dense, with an air pressure 92 times that of Earth, equivalent to being trapped under 1,600 meters of water. In addition, the air is almost entirely carbon dioxide, and there are thick clouds of sulfuric acid. The surface temperature is 465 degrees Celsius, hotter than Mercury, which is closer to the Sun. When passing through the dense atmosphere of Venus, the Sun's bright light gradually fades, turning an eerie orange. Before landing, you might briefly see a desolate, rugged surface before being completely engulfed by thick clouds. There is no oxygen, only irresistible suffocation, toxicity, and searing heat. The huge pressure would brutally compress all gas spaces in your lungs and nose in an instant. The hot temperature would make the skin blister instantly, leading to dehydration and carbonization, and internal organs would fail due to the high temperature in a few seconds. What's even scarier is that there are also tiny sulfuric acid liquids suspended in the atmosphere. Although the sulfuric acid rain will evaporate due to the high temperature before landing, it doesn't reduce the damage to the environment in the slightest. The surrounding metal would glow a dark red in the heat. The goggles of your helmet would start to soften and even melt, and naked skin would directly carbonize. In such a cruel environment, any attempt would be in vain. The combination of poisonous air, high temperatures, and crushing pressure can completely destroy you in a second. Even if you don't disintegrate on the spot, you will eventually be melted and corroded, becoming part of the rocks of Venus. There is no death struggle here, no breathing room, only the multiple tortures of pressure, heat waves, and toxic gases to wipe away the traces of your existence. Skipping the tranquil blue planet, you have arrived on Mars. Compared to Venus, the red planet appears to be slightly milder, But for unprotected humans, it is still a quiet, inescapable death by suffocation. The atmosphere of Mars is extremely thin, only 1% of Earth, and it's almost entirely carbon dioxide. This means there is hardly any oxygen, and any liquid water would boil and evaporate in seconds. Temperatures are equally extreme, averaging around -60 degrees Celsius. It can rise to 20 degrees Celsius during the day and drop to -140 degrees Celsius at night. If you stood in this red sand garden and took off your helmet, the first thing you would notice is not the cold, but a dead silence. You'd see a purple-gray sky, a dusty horizon, and possibly a massive dust storm, but you wouldn't hear any wind. Mars is windy, but the thin air can't carry the sound to your ears. After a few seconds, the real danger begins. You would open your mouth to breathe but couldn't suck anything in. Due to the low air pressure, the saliva on your tongue and the water in your lungs would start to boil. It creates ice in the body as it cools, making strange sounds. Your skin would become tight, and the fluid in your blood would convert into bubbles, swelling in your blood vessels. Although you wouldn't burst, you could feel the uncontrolled changes in your body. Hypoxia symptoms appear rapidly, and you would only have about 15 to 20 seconds of consciousness. Simultaneously, due to the inability to dissipate heat, body temperature is lost rapidly, and the evaporation of water from the eyes and lungs brings a biting sensation. Your vision would start to shrink and darken, limbs would gradually go numb, and the brain would lose function due to lack of oxygen. Blood vessels can rupture due to pressure differences, accompanied with a subtle tingling sensation of ruptured vessels in the nose and mouth. You might even taste a hint of rust. After 30 seconds, you would lose consciousness due to severe hypoxia, and death would come shortly thereafter. There would be no struggle or wailing, just falling quietly in this silent sand garden. In the Martian low-pressure environment, corpses don't decompose. They rapidly freeze and dehydrate, eventually becoming naturally mummified in the dry air. Death on Mars is classified as asphyxiation or ebulism. As scary as it sounds, compared to being burned by the flames of Venus, this way of dying seems much calmer. Perhaps in the distant past, Mars was the birthplace of life, but now it is just a graveyard waiting for an inadvertent intruder. There is not a shred of breathable air, no merciful temperature. Even the simplest breath is the ultimate torture to the limits of your body. We continue to travel to the worlds of the outer solar system to see what the experience of landing on Jupiter is like. The first thing to make clear is that Jupiter has no solid surface. What you see from space is actually just the top of a dense cloud. Once you break through this cloud, you begin to fall into an unfathomable abyss from which you can never return. At first, everything seems calm. You will pass through layers of softly colored cloud bands, orange, white, and dark red intertwined, gentle and charming. But this beautiful tranquility is soon broken. Jupiter's gravitational force, 2.5 times that of Earth, will quickly pull you deeper into the atmosphere, composed primarily of hydrogen. Then, you'd encounter a superstorm. Jupiter's jet winds can reach speeds up to 640 kilometers per hour, with violent air currents throwing you around completely out of control. If you happen to fall into the Great Red Spot, which has persisted for hundreds of years, you will face an even more unimaginably violent environment. The lightning intensity on Jupiter is 3 times that on Earth. Lightning and thunder erupt around you, illuminating the dark clouds as the wind howls like the gates of hell opening. As you continue falling, the environment gets worse. The temperature starts to rise, climbing from -100 degrees Celsius to hundreds of degrees Celsius. At a depth of about 50 kilometers, the atmospheric pressure is several times that of Earth, and it increases to tens and then hundreds deeper down. You would feel your body being gradually crushed, your lungs collapsing, hollow tissues like eardrums and sinuses rupturing.
Like eardrums and sinuses rupturing. In this environment, the atmosphere becomes as thick as a liquid. You're no longer free-falling, but feel more like a deep-sea diver. As the fall continues, the light disappears, plunging you into complete darkness. The pressure continues to rise, causing your bones to crack and your blood and organs to be compressed and torn apart. Ultimately, under great pressure combined with extreme heat, your body would completely evaporate. Your atoms would merge with Jupiter's atmosphere, devoured cleanly and no longer recognizable. This is not an exaggeration. The Galileo probe that entered Jupiter's atmosphere only survived for less than a minute before it was completely destroyed. As for humans, they couldn't even break through the first few layers, let alone get to its core. Our journey keeps moving to Saturn in the outer solar system. At first glance, you will be attracted by its spectacular planetary rings. Saturn's rings, made up of countless pieces of ice and rock, are like a crown in the universe, shining in the sun with an unreal beauty. But this grandeur is just an appearance. Saturn is an extremely cold world, with its cloud tops reaching temperatures as low as -178 degrees Celsius. If you try to dive into it, the fate that awaits you will be similar to Jupiter's, eventually being ground into dust by the endless stream of gas and extreme pressure. Even without setting foot on Saturn, its planetary rings are extremely dangerous. Though they seem soft and dreamy, they are in fact a high-speed death vortex. The rings are made up of ice and rocks of varying sizes. Some are as fine as dust, while some are as big as hills. These fragments orbiting Saturn can reach speeds of tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. For a human, it's like being in a high-speed storm of bullets and shells. Initially, you may only feel a small number of particles passing by like biting snow. But suddenly, a fragment the size of a small pebble could penetrate your body at a lethal speed. You wouldn't even have time to react before bigger fragments follow. A piece of ice the size of a fist is enough to cut off a limb, and boulders can blow you to pieces in an instant with explosive power. In a vacuum, the shattered body would begin to boil and quickly freeze. Blood would turn into red ice crystals, floating among the icy dust of Saturn's rings. It would be a dead silence, with no call for help and no response. Only broken flesh and bones gradually dissipating into the icy rings of Saturn, becoming insignificant dust within them. Moving on to Uranus, often called an ice giant, a name that is well deserved. Uranus has the coldest atmosphere in the solar system, with temperatures in the uppermost region dropping to -224 degrees Celsius, one step away from absolute zero. There's no oxygen in the atmosphere, which is mainly composed of hydrogen and helium, with a small amount of methane that gives the planet its unique blue-green hue. It is speculated that in the deep layers, ammonia and hydrogen sulfide may also be present, not only stinky but also deadly toxic gases. Although the cloud tops of Uranus don't have the extreme pressures of Jupiter and Saturn, the atmospheric pressure will still increase rapidly with depth, eventually far exceeding Earth's level. But there's no need to worry, because before stress became a problem, you would already be dead. The thing that kills you here isn't stress, it's the extreme cold, toxic gases, and violent air currents. Uranus is not a static, icy world. It has a weather system like Earth, but the wind speed in some areas can reach up to 900 kilometers per hour. If you were to fall into it, it would be like being thrown into an icy hurricane of highly toxic gases. The sun is just a faint point of light here, and the thin light makes the blue-green sky blurry. You can't breathe any oxygen, only a mixture of gases that kills quickly. The moisture in your eyes, nose, and throat would freeze in seconds. You would quickly fall into a state of blurred consciousness due to lack of oxygen. If you survived for a few more seconds, a pervasive chill would pierce your bone marrow, impossible to resist. You would die of asphyxiation, low temperature, and poisoning within a minute. Your body would continue to fall into deeper layers of gas until the air pressure finally rips it to pieces. Finally, you arrive at the outermost planet in the solar system, Neptune. This beautiful blue giant hides the most violent weather system in the entire solar system. Neptune's atmosphere is extremely cold, with temperatures just above the clouds at the top reaching about -208 degrees Celsius, similar to Uranus. However, it has winds of up to 2,100 kilometers per hour, making it the planet with the fastest known sustained winds. For humans, the way to die on this planet is a combination of extreme violence and cold destruction. Due to Neptune's great distance, the sun is dim, and the whole planet is shrouded in dark blue year-round. When you fall into Neptune's atmosphere, you might get a brief look at the giant storm, the Great Dark Spot. With almost no buffer time, a supersonic storm will draw you in. As you continue to descend, the pressure goes up, and the thin air gradually becomes as thick as fog. The wind speed breaks through the sound barrier, turning into a real high-pressure weapon. Tiny methane ice crystal particles in the air become like high-velocity bullets in the supersonic airflow, breaking down everything. Your body would be torn apart in the wind, which would strip your flesh like sandpaper. While still conscious, you would be spinning violently in turbulence, completely disoriented, feeling only the freezing cold and raging wind. In seconds, any protective equipment would be completely torn apart under the severe wind's pressure. Bare skin would be battered by the extreme airflow and ice crystals until the flesh is blurred and bones are exposed. Finally, your wreckage would be swallowed up by this endless storm, your fragments scattered deep in the sea of clouds on this raging planet. After experiencing these extreme death conditions in the solar system, let's look at Earth again. The Earth seems particularly gentle at this moment. Its appropriate air pressure, mild climate, abundant oxygen, and abundant liquid water make it the ideal setting for life. When you stand in the sun, with your feet on the ground, a breeze blowing, and looking up at the blue sky and white clouds, you will truly realize, between breaths, that the blue planet is a rare miracle in the universe.